On day 2 of Donald Trump's impeachment trial, Democrats are presenting their case, arguing that the former president inflamed and incited the Capitol riot. Cuban authorities underline the positive results shown by clinical trials of COVID-19 vaccine candidates developed in the nation. And the United States has announced new sanctions against Myanmar as tensions in the country continue following the military takeover. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. On day 2 of Donald Trump's impeachment trial, Democrats are presenting their case, arguing that the former president inflamed and incited the Capitol riot. The impeachment managers aim to show that Trump tried to fabricate an election win through relentless and escalating campaigns. They stressed that the former president ignored adverse court rulings, pressured and threatened election officials, attacked senators and members of the Congress, pressured the Justice Department, and even bullied his own vice president. House impeachment manager and Republican Ted Lieu focused on Trump's pressure on Mike Pence to challenge the election results, stressing he was feverishly grasping for straws at retaining his hold on the presidency. In an act of desperation that saw him turn his own vice president, pressuring Pence to violate his constitutional oath.
The evidence will show you that ex-President Trump was no innocent bystander. The evidence will show that he clearly incited the January 6th insurrection. It will show that Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief of a dangerous insurrection.
This is a specific warning to anyone who won't help him overturn the results. Anyone who was against the president became an enemy. And let me be very clear. The president wasn't just coming for one or two people or Democrats like me. He was coming for you, for Democratic and Republican senators. He was coming for all of us, just as the mob did at his direction.
Moving on, the National Electoral Council of Ecuador continues the audit of the vote count following the general elections held on February 7th. With 99.71% of the ballots audited, Andrés Arauz is consolidated as the winner of the first round of the presidential election with more than 32% of the vote. Meanwhile, neck and neck in second place are Yacu Perez of the Pachacutic Indigenous Party and Guillermo Lasso of the Creating Opportunities Party, both of whom have made allegations of electoral fraud. Perez has so far secured 19.65% of the vote, while Lasso is just behind him with 19.60%. The population is still waiting for the Electoral Council to make the full results official in order to find out which of the two candidates will face Andrés Arauz in the second round. Moving on, President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, is meeting this Wednesday with the Agricultural Liaison Board to discuss the sector production and the measures announced by the executive for rural areas. The meeting held at the Presidential Palace will see Fernandez and his aides evaluate, together with the Liaison Board, the strategies to stimulate food production in the country and reduce its costs. During the meeting, representatives of the agricultural sectors will express their concerns about the president's decision to increase taxes on exports of primary products. Fernandez has explained that the measure is due to the increase in the domestic demand for productions such as red meat. This Wednesday, residents of the Colombian city of Buenaventura made a human chain to demand an end to the violence in the country. Citizens gathered on Bolivar Avenue where they held hands to form a human chain stretching 21 kilometers and advocate for peace in the region and throughout the country. The demonstration was supported by the Catholic Church, which was represented by Bishop Rubén Darío Jaramillo Montoya. Activists also demanded better living conditions and the strengthening of the public health and education systems. In Brazil, Rio de Janeiro's municipal authorities canceled this year's carnivals with a warning that clandestine celebrations won't be tolerated. Thousands of carnival workers and thousands more who fed the affiliated industries that shape the celebration can only look forward to next year. Police and patrols will be deployed to enforce the restrictions with fines and even jail possible for violators. State health authorities pledged they will finish a mass immunization program for the 16 million residents by the end of the year, providing a glimmer of hope that they will be able to celebrate the event during next year's carnival.
I'm going to watch Vibraduros parades and enjoy myself at home, not try and predict the future. I will have 10 months of work and fight for the championship, because the school will have a wonderful year and we will take that energy into the future. There won't be carnival this year. That's hard and sad, but there will be no carnival. I am asking people who want to attend parties or carnival dances. It's not allowed or legal. Don't think it's part of the conversation, because these celebrations will not happen.
We're taking a very short break now. Join us again after this. And also, don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at Bravo Telesur for more news. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Cuba highlights the positive results shown by clinical trials of vaccine candidates developed in the nation against COVID-19. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel described as encouraging the meeting held with scientists working on the 4 vaccine candidates, Soberana 1, Soberana 2, Abdala, and Mambisa. Scientists provided an update on the progress made. The president highlighted the results shown and considered as promising that Soberana 2, the most developed vaccine, will start phase 3 clinical trials in March. For this purpose, Soberana 02 is already being produced on a large scale. In this regard, the Finlay Vaccine Institute Director General Vicente Vérez said a batch of 150,000 doses is ready, representing a very important scientific and technical milestone.
Today's latest news is that we increased Soberana 2's production process last week, and we have already produced a batch of 150,000 doses with very good results. This is truly a very important scientific and technical milestone, because one thing is that you hope something will have positive results, and another that in fact it has them. Today we are producing the second batch, and we truly feel very hopeful that everything will turn out the way we have planned.
Cuba has announced a big expansion of the private sector that was constructed to a list of 127 allowed activities and now will be regulated by a list of prohibited activities instead. Labor Minister Marta Elena Feito Cabrera said that only 124 areas will be controlled partly or wholly by the state and that the list will be published in the following days. The decision was taken as the Caribbean island is living a monetary restructuring that entails the elimination of the dual currency and unification of the exchange rate for both private and state sector. Around 600,000 Cubans work in the private sector, which has been deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and the enforcement of the U.S. sanctions applied during Donald Trump's administration. In the U.S., a nursing home in New York gave veterans experimental COVID-19 treatments without the knowledge of their families. The New York State-run facility in St. Albans, located in the borough of Queens, gave residents a cocktail of various including hydrochloroxide and acimidrosine, despite safety warnings and doubts expressed by health authorities about the efficacy of the drugs. New York State allowed facilities to administer hydrochloroquine even after public health experts cautioned against its use in non-hospital settings or for elderly and vulnerable patients, with many families only discovering it was used on their loved ones when they received the medical bills. Berlin began administering the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine on Wednesday, with the first doses intended mainly for nurses and medical staff. Dilek Kavalsi, Berlin's health senator, observed some of the first inoculations at a vaccination center set up in Terminal C of Berlin's former Tegel airport. Germany's infection rates are gradually declining towards the government target level, and politicians have vowed to open schools and child care centers as the first priority. AstraZeneca has agreed to supply 40 million vaccine doses to the European Union by the end of March. To date, Germany registers over 2.3 million infections and more than 63,000 deaths. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his chief scientific advisor urged the population on Wednesday to get vaccinated against the coronavirus in order to eradicate the diseases and prevent mutations. Many people in the UK refuse to be vaccinated or to vaccine their children, citing risks dismissed by scientific experts.
And let me stress that these vaccines are safe and effective, and it was good to see the World Health Organization today confirm its support for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine for use in everyone over the age of 18 and obviously everyone over 65.
The Bristol variant has got one of the changes that the South African variant's got as well, and again it's one that the virus likes to try and get, so it's not surprising it's happened, and it will happen elsewhere as well. And in getting that variant, it does make it slightly more likely to look different to the immune system. So we need to watch out for it, we need to measure it, we need to keep on top of it, and need to keep testing the vaccine effects in this situation. But the very key thing, the thing that we have to do is get numbers down. The lower you get numbers, the lower the chance of getting more mutations.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday said a study on the country's coronavirus vaccine published by the British medical journal The Lancet has increased confidence in the vaccine. Speaking during a conference call with cabinet members, Putin praised the results of the advanced study. Researchers said that based on a trial last year involving about 20,000 people in Russia, the vaccine is about 91% effective. Sputnik 5 was approved by the Russian government in August of last year. Outside Russia, Sputnik 5 has received authorization in over a dozen countries, including Belarus, Armenia, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Iran.
This journal, The Lancet, proved without doubt its high status and objectivity because hundreds of thousands of inoculations made in Russia proved their unbiased and highly professional conclusions. It increases confidence both towards our vaccine and towards this journal.
The Czech Republic's Prime Minister visited Serbia on Wednesday to find out more about the Balkan nation's mass inoculation program with Chinese and Russian vaccines. Prime Minister Andrej Babis has been seeking vaccines outside the EU's common program after deliveries from EU-approved Western drug companies have been delayed. With a team of experts, Babis last week also visited Hungary, which has the first EU country to greenlight the Russian vaccine. Thanks to the Chinese and Russian vaccines, Serbia is currently second in Europe after Britain in the rate of the vaccination rollout per capita. The Czech Republic, a country of 10 million people, has recorded over 1 million infections and more than 17,000 deaths. Serbia so far has vaccinated more than 500,000 people, mainly with the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine, Russia's Sputnik 5, and to a lesser extent with the Pfizer-BioNTech shot.
So, of course, we have gathered much information about the situation here, how Syria conducts its vaccination plan, what categories have been vaccinated, what the overall system is like. That's, of course, very important for us, and I'm glad that we had such an opportunity today to get a picture about the situation in other countries.
Naše iskustva sa sve tri vakcine koje u ovom trenutku imamo u Republici Srbiji, dakle to je Pfizer, Sputnik i Sinopharm su odlična. Zaista odlična. Tako da, opet, kao neko ko nije stručan u tim stvarima, ne mogu da procenjujem koja je od njih bolja. Čini mi se da su sve, rekla bih, jednako dobre ili efikasne.
We're taking a very short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. U.S. President Joe Biden ordered new sanctions on Myanmar on Wednesday following the military takeover and ousting of its civilian government.
As you know, the assault on Burma's transition to democracy remains an issue of deep bipartisan concern. We've consulted at length, for example, with Senator McConnell, who has had a very keen interest in this, and his team, and we welcome their helpful insights. We've also been in close contact with our allies and partners around the world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, driving vigorous diplomatic outreach to help coordinate an international response to what happened. As protests grow, violence against those asserting their democratic rights is unacceptable, and we're going to keep calling it out. The people of Burma are making their voices heard, and the world is watching. We'll be ready to impose additional measures, and we'll continue to work with our international partners to urge other nations to join us in these efforts.
On Wednesday, tens of thousands of people took part in a protest march led by Buddhist monks against Myanmar's military takeover in Mandalay. The march came a day after police in the country's second largest city used water cannons and fired warning shots in an attempt to disperse demonstrators. Holding a large banner denouncing last week's military takeover, the monks led the noisy but peaceful crowd on a 3-hour march where there were no reports of any clashes with police. Protesters are demanding that power be restored to Suu Kyi's civilian government. And also in Myanmar's capital, a day after authorities fired water cannons and shots at protesters and left one woman critically injured, police again warned crowds to disperse, but backed away from a repeat of Tuesday's enforcement. Several thousand gathered on Wednesday morning, chanting slogans against the military who seized power 10 days ago, though the number appeared to be smaller than on previous days. China's foreign ministry on Wednesday voiced a strong opposition to the Canadian spy chief's warning of the strategic threat posed by China and urged Canadian politicians to stop spreading alarmist remarks.
China has always adhered to the principle of non-interference in internal affairs, still less doing things like arresting citizens of a third country for no reason on the behest of other countries. We urge the politicians concerned in Canada to abandon their Cold War mentality and ideological bias, stop their unwarranted attacks and slanders on China, stop spreading alarmist remarks, and do something conducive to China-Canada relations and to enhance mutual trust between China and Canada. China is concerned about the current situation in Myanmar and hopes that all parties in Myanmar will take into account the overall situation of national development and stability, properly handle their differences under the constitutional and legal framework, and maintain political and social stability.
This Wednesday, China's probe Tianwen-1 successfully entered the orbit around Mars. The Tianwen-1's mission is to land a rover and collect data on underground water and possible signs of ancient life. The probe arrived after a nearly 7-month voyage from Earth. The orbiter-rover combination became the second spacecraft in 2 days to reach the Red Planet after an orbiter from the United Arab Emirates led the way on Tuesday. Next week, the U.S. will try to land its Perseverance rover on the maritime surface. On Wednesday night, protesters engaged in minor scuffles with riot police in Bangkok as pro-democracy rallies continued in the Thai capital. Prosecutors in Thailand charged 4 prominent activists with sedition and defaming the monarchy for their protest activities on Tuesday. The case is the first of numerous ones lodged against participants in the student-led protest movement that is being prosecuted by the Attorney General's office. It is also the first in which the defendants are expected to spend spent significant time in jail as suspects in other cases have usually been released after arrest. The protest movement campaigned last year for Prime Minister Prayut Chan-ocha and his government to step down, the constitution to be amended to make it a more democratic, and the monarchy to be reformed to make it more accountable. The United Nations has strongly condemned an attack in Mali on Wednesday in which 28 peacekeepers from Togo were wounded.
We'll start off with an update from Mali, where, as you know, early this morning, 28 peacekeepers from Togo were wounded when their temporary base located in Kirena near Douentza in north-central Mali was targeted by what our UN colleagues on the ground describe as a complex attack. We, of course, strongly condemn the attack. The UN mission on the ground has taken all necessary measures to ensure that the injured receive prompt and appropriate treatment. We, of course, wish them all a speedy and full recovery.
The new U.S. administration of President Joe Biden has announced that it will continue to enforce the so-called CAESAR Act against Syria, pushed through by his Republican predecessor, Donald Trump. Both the Syrian government and people have stressed they will continue to resist the U.S. sanctions, just as they have managed to confront and defeat the terrorist war imposed on their country. Our correspondent, Hisham Wanous, brings us more details on this report.
Children are the future of the country. They are human potential that, despite the ravages of almost 10 years of foreign-imposed terrorist war, remain attached to their homeland and determined to regain its splendor and to develop their creativity and innovation in defiance of the U.S. economic terrorism that plagues their country. This was demonstrated by members of the Syrian Pioneers Organization through an artistic exhibition of works and handicrafts that they themselves produced as a tribute to the Syrian Arab Army and President Bashar al-Assad.
What has been presented by the senior members of the Pioneers Organization in this event constitutes a message of defense against terrorists and the current economic war that plagues their country, demonstrates their creativity and determination to continue producing despite all the difficulties caused by the war, to rebuild their country and preserve the victory achieved by our brave national army.
Through this event, we ratify that all of us, children, adults, and seniors, identify ourselves with our brave army and our President Bashar al-Assad, and that despite all pressures we will remain steadfast, children and adults alike, ready to offer what is most valuable in defense of our homeland and our soil.
At the same time, the first Syrian Economic Forum meeting was held in Damascus, an event organized by the National Center for the Promotion of National and International Investment, and whose main objective is to find practical solutions to the difficult situation the country is facing due to the Western economic blockade, an initiative that is being developed with the support of friendly countries such as Russia, Iran, and China, interested in helping the Syrian people to overcome the effects of the sanctions tightened with the so-called CAESAR Act.
We have managed to cope with the terrorist war and the political pressures, and we are currently coping with the economic war, and through the center that we have established, we are striving to find economic solutions on the basis of boosting domestic and foreign investment, especially in terms of material and moral reconstructions.
What we are seeking now is to reorganize, reorient, and systematize the national human potential, so that the carriers of this potential will be more active and more effective in the face of a current economic war. And this is a plan that we are developing locally with the help of our Russian friends.
Efforts on the ground, the willpower of the Syrian people, as well as the numerous official and civil society economic initiatives, have made it possible, along with the help of Syria's allies, to rehabilitate and start up more than 1,000 industrial facilities, specialized in producing pharmaceuticals, foodstuffs, and other basic necessities, a significant achievement that demonstrates Syria's determination to resist and emerge triumphant from the current economic war imposed by Washington and its allies.
Hisham Wanous, teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.